Welcome to Experts Unleashed, a podcast that aims to uncover how professionals and entrepreneurs transform their experience into income while making a positive impact in the world. I'm your host, Joel Irway, and over the past 4 years, I've helped entrepreneurs develop and launch their expert-based businesses to grow past 6 and 7 figures per year. Now, a professional expert serves their community through paid training, education, or service, and this podcast will show you how to design and execute your plan to become a 6 or 7 figure expert without a big team. So, let's get started. Hey, what's going on, experts? Welcome to another episode of Experts Unleashed. It's Joel Irway here, your host, and today you are in for a very special treat. I just got off the interview with our guest today, Dr. Ashley Hampton. And for those of you who have been following along, my whole purpose for this podcast is to teach other experts, aspiring experts, and entrepreneurs how to spot opportunity, right? I want to share those aha moments with people who are developed now and who are currently developing. I want to let them share their experience with how they uncovered opportunity in their business. Because for all of us who are trying to monetize our expertise, it's important to learn how to seize opportunities and how to spot opportunities. In this episode, I really dove deep and I drilled down into some very important questions with Dr. Ashley Hampton, who started out as who had a career in the prison system. And she thought that her lifelong career was going to be in the prison system until she had a devastating injury that forced her to take an alternate path. And the reason why I wanted to have her on this interview is because I wanted her to tell her journey. Not necessarily that she always wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I wanted to share that journey of how she spotted the opportunity. And it took us a while to get there because I like asking questions and uncovering the gaps from how she turned her background and her experience as a doctor and a prison guard into starting her own practice in a completely unrelated field. So I want you to understand that that is why I ask these questions, and that is my whole purpose for this podcast. You're going to love this episode, so stay tuned and enjoy. Dr. Ashley, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I really am excited to be here.
So we met back in New York City about a month ago now, maybe a little bit more than a month ago at Chris Winfield's event. And we had connected, and I had mentioned to you about this show, and obviously you said you were interested. So I'm super excited to have you on because I think your story is so unique. In my background, I work with a lot of digital marketers, people in the business space, and it's not all that often that I come across somebody like yourself who has made a successful career helping others in kind of a non-business sense. I mean, right now you're doing some sort of business coaching, but like your primary success, what really got you here is not what is not what the background is. And so give our audience a quick, let's say 2 to 3 minute introduction about who you are and what you're currently doing now. And then I want to rewind and we'll start at the very beginning and talk about your journey and how you discovered that you've got this expertise that people need and they want, and we'll turn it into a business. So let's start there.
Okay. So my journey has been really wild and twisty. I have a bachelor's in psychology, a master's in marriage and family therapy, which I never used before I went to be a school counselor, which I loved, but didn't quite love the paperwork and all of the administrative stuff involved. So I went back to school and got my PhD in psychology. And along the way, I did some internship work at the federal prison system. And I really, really enjoyed that work. So after graduation, there wasn't a position open where I wanted to be. So I came back to my home state of Alabama and got a forensic psychologist position at our secure medical facility, which works with guys that have been adjudicated not guilty by reason of insanity. So did that for about a year before a position opened up at the federal prison. And I went back to the federal prison and was there about 6 months before I got hurt in a training exercise. So that job, even though like I was up for promotion, like starting to make all of the plans, that job, even though I thought I was going to be there for 25 years and retire. Over, done. So I made the really risky move to turn in my 2-week notice and return back to my home state of Alabama and open a private practice, where initially I worked mostly with disability, people applying for disability, evaluating them. And then I've now moved into evaluations for kids and adults in child protective services in that system. So that's my private practice world. And then the transition that I'm doing now is adding on some coaching to teach people how to do what I've done in building this business and making it successful as a solo entrepreneur.
What's fascinating about your story and what I love is when we were doing our pre-interview, I was trying to draw this correlation between when you left the prison system, right? This place where you had dreamed, okay, great. This is going to be my long-term career, 25 years. Like I've got my plan set out. Boom. Somebody throws a wrench into my plans and we just can't, like, I have to make a major pivot.
Right.
So you said, I don't recommend this for anybody, but I left and I started a private practice. And like, I was trying to draw the correlation between what you were doing in the prison system and then what you did when you launched the private practice. And there's a huge difference there because a lot of people can take like their experience and kind of what they were doing in the corporate world and transition it to your private practice. But like, I want to start there.
Okay.
Number one, I think it's fascinating because you truly love to help people, which is like the number one rule of experts. Like you have to really want to help people, and you serve a very, very needy, I don't want to say needy in a bad way, but like they need,
right.
Quite honestly, they need help. So you serve a very needy audience. So explain a little bit more about what you were doing when unfortunately, like what was your job role when you got hurt? Go deep into that a little bit more. And then I want to start with when you started your private practice and what the difference in skills and skill set were. And then we'll try and draw a little bit of a correlation.
Okay. So when I went back to the prison system, I was working in inpatient substance abuse. So there's a program in the federal system that allows inmates to participate and learn, trying to reduce their criminal thinking, trying to reduce their substance use and or their substance use selling. And if they successfully complete the program, they're able to have a year off their sentence if they meet other criteria. It's not just that easy. So that is actually quite a long program for most people. And you need several practitioners, staff members in there. So I was one of them. And it was a huge, huge program. And basically I ran groups. I did individual counseling with these guys, taught them social skills, like communication skills, those kinds of things that unfortunately people don't learn. So I did that and I was doing that. And I was actually learning a lot about me, and that I thought people knew these things and they just don't. Some people just don't. So when I got hurt, and the reason I said I don't recommend people do what I did, I just turned in my 2-week notice and left and just was like, I'll just open a business. I've always kind of had little side hustles along the way. So I have a business mindset. I don't know. I never went that way for some reason. So I came home, found this need in the community where I was, that there were two psychologists doing evaluations for Social Security disability, only two. And they had this huge backlog of people that needed to be evaluated. So I filled out the paperwork, got it. Turns out I actually really do like evaluation. So I was really on the lucky end that I got to do what I liked and have pretty much a full calendar within a couple of months of opening my practice.
Okay. That's amazing, by the way. So for somebody to get a full calendar within 3 months of starting a brand new business, I don't think I've ever heard of it.
Yeah, it was total shocker to me as well. And not at all what I expected and not what the industry said would even happen.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently in psychology, you should go into a group practice. You can't do this by yourself. You should have a secretary and a billing professional and, all of these people working for you. I don't have anybody. It's just me. So apparently I can't do what I've done. I don't believe in the word can't. So it's worked out just fine for me.
So what I want to talk about is ideas right now, and expertise and ideas. The way that I kind of view building a successful business and finding the right niche, finding the right idea, it's like, okay, number one, like, what are you great at? So when we were talking before we started this podcast, we started this interview, you had mentioned something that I found was really, really fascinating. You, the core skill, because the markets that you were serving are completely different from what you were doing in the prison versus what you were doing in your private practice. But the correlation that you're putting together was the word evaluation, and you said you like putting together puzzles, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by that? Like, explain that a little bit?
So for me, in working with people, they don't always give you everything you need verbally. So you have to pull things from them sometimes. Sometimes you get things from records. Sometimes you get things from watching them, observation, what other people have seen. And you put it all together and try to make your best guess as to what's going on. And then you check it out with the person. You know, like, okay, here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I'm seeing. What of this works for you? And for me, that's what I was doing in the prison. That's what I do now in private practice. And that's what
I want to pause you real quick. So when you say that's what you were doing in the prison, right? You had it was a substance abuse program. So you're helping them get off of the substance, right? So was that true?
No, they were already done with that.
They were already done. Okay.
Most of them had already been in prison actually for several years.
Okay. So then in the psychology world, what were you helping those specific people do? Like you said, you're putting together the pieces of the puzzle, but like, what were you really helping them do?
The biggest thing that I did for my caseload specifically, and I don't want to talk about everybody in general, but for my caseload, I had a lot of people that were still stuck in what we call criminal thinking. So instead of like you and I follow the rules and it just happens because that's what we think, some of these individuals were constantly trying to figure out, how do I manipulate the situation to make this easier for me, regardless of whether or not I'm following a rule? So what happens with that kind of criminal thinking is when they release into society, and almost all of them do, I mean, it's a huge majority. When they release back into society, they basically just commit a crime again and return back. So the idea behind the program is you reduce the criminal thinking and try to teach them more of how to live in society successfully. And then you reduce the recidivism rate or the return to prison rate. So most of what I did was try to figure out a picture of how these people lived their lives outside the prison before they came in, and then what the difference was in what they wanted to do when they left. Because I had a lot of guys who've been in for 20, 25 years. I mean, they'd spent a large chunk of their life in prison. They didn't want to come back. So we had to kind of figure out the picture, what it looked like, what we wanted it to look like, and then what we needed to change in the middle in order to make it look like this new picture they wanted.
You're probably excellent at sales calls, by the way.
I try.
It's the same process, similar process.
Exactly. And it's very shocking to me how much these skills that you learn in psychology actually translate to business very well. And the more I talk to people, the more they're like, you sure you haven't had any business courses? And I'm like, I took accounting 1, when I was in college, but that was it.
Yep.
But it does translate so well. So thankfully it's helped me a great deal as I've moved through the private practice world.
The first books that got me interested in business were psychology books. Yeah. It's a side story that we can talk about another time, but I would,
exactly. We will.
I would go to the library and I would literally go to the psychology section, and Malcolm Gladwell was the first, first mainstream books that I bought. So, okay. Anyway, so in prison, you're dissecting their minds and you're putting together their past. Like, hey, what was life like back then? And, what got you into the situation? Like, what do you want it to be when you get out? And so you're helping them with that transition. Okay. Awesome. So now your first private practice, like, what were you serving people and what were you helping them do in your private practice in terms of putting the puzzle pieces together? I want to use your own words.
So for disability evaluations, and I mean, there may be some people out there that are listening that have been through this process. People that have applied for disability, they have all these steps they have to go through. And if they meet all of these criteria, then they get appointments with medical professionals. So a medical doctor, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, whatever their disabling condition that they've reported is. So I would get people into my office And in this very brief interview with some records from Social Security that the person had provided, I had to try to determine what their disabling condition was and how it was impacting their life. So in terms of like the Social Security question is something like, can this person be employed again? Even if it's not necessarily their job that they had, can they be employed again doing something else? So it was in this really short period of time, I almost had to do the same thing, figure out what their life looked like before this condition happened, what happened, and what that condition was then causing. And can we figure out any other way for them to basically improve their quality of life? You know, can they go back to work? Do they need to go to like vocational rehab to get some job skills retraining? Those kinds of things. So I, just like with the prison system, my main goal in my head is, let me improve your quality of life later. So that's how I approached all of those, like putting the puzzle pieces together. The quality of life for probably 85% of them was great. Then they had this whatever trauma, either the onset of a mental illness, or they had a car accident that caused a bunch of things, or an on-the-job injury. And then we're dealing with this. And where do we go from here? So it still was very much a puzzle to kind of put together and then figure out. I kind of feel like I had the corners and then had to figure out the middle and how to get them there.
Was there any relationship to the injury that you had at the prison system to what you're helping people do in this specific role?
It kind of colored some of the vision. Like I understood for the people that were going through workers' comp, like I understood that, which is a horrible process for everyone. And so, you know, when they started complaining about that, you know, I could commiserate with them. I knew I obviously didn't qualify for disability because I hurt my knee. And according to the people, like I only need my ears to do my job, which is partially true. So that was the kind of the transition idea is, even if they can't work in environment number 1, can we get them some help where they can work in environment number 2? So although it wasn't planned that way, my story and kind of my experiences were helpful, I felt, in helping other people figure out, okay, let's see what we can do for you. Because while everybody says, oh, everybody's on disability, not everybody's on disability. And if you are, the people that were really injured and kind of going through this traumatic process of trying to heal, we're talking about a lot of people were making thousands of dollars a month, and then they go to $1,000 a month. You know, it was a huge negative impact on their life overall, in addition to, you know, all the mental stuff that happens because I can't provide, I can't do what I was doing, you know, all of the sad, depressive pieces that come in.
Would they have to pay you to come see you with this interview? Or like, where's I want to talk business real quick because I'm in my mind missing something, right? So like, what do you provide aside from the psychological help, or is that all they're coming for? Is they just want psychological assistance? Like, where's the connection here?
They were sent to me by Social Security. So Social Security paid me.
Got it.
That actually came from my state. So I got paid from the state for each evaluation that I did. Those people were mandated to come to me to get the evaluation. I just took it one step further to try to figure out what could help them because it seemed really not a nice thing to do, to talk to them and ask them all these things and just be like, get out of my office. So, you know, the recommendations were not necessarily something that everyone would get in terms of whatever provider they went to. I just did it because I felt like it needed to be done. So, I mean, I got paid per evaluation, so it didn't matter how much time I spent with them. For me, it did matter that I at least tried to help them move forward, you know, and put like the last piece of the puzzle that I could put together for them.
Cool. Awesome. Okay. So then at the end of the evaluation, would you make a recommendation? Would you refer them somewhere? Like, what happens at the end?
I would send my report to Social Security. Social Security does whatever they do. And they either get disability or they don't. So if they get disability, they start a check. It's, like that's the process.
Got it.
They come back for a re-eval every 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
Unless it's like a workers' comp type thing, the doctor releases them, then they come back earlier. So if they don't get disability, sometimes they have to come back for another evaluation. Sometimes they go for a court appeal. There's all kinds of things at that point that can happen. And I may or may not be called in to do something else with their case, but usually it was a one and done. So I saw them for 45 minutes to an hour and that was it.
Got it. Okay. So this is like the step that they had to go through to get disability, see if they qualify. Okay. That makes sense. Okay. So then take me to the next step, right? So you launch your private practice, right? How long were you doing this for? Wildly successful within 3 months.
So I booked out within 3 months, and within 12 months, I was making 6 figures. So that was more money than I'd ever made in my life. And I had absolutely no clue what to do with that other than put it in the bank. But mindset wise, it was a little weird to know that I was seeing all these people that were having such a hard time. And I, at that time in my life, was making more money than I'd ever made. So I kind of had to deal with that piece. But what I was also seeing, like on the business side, was I started to see my no-show rate climb. So in the very beginning, I had about 20% of people that wouldn't show, which that was all right. That wasn't that big of a deal. I just plugged in paperwork until the next person got there. Well, when I moved locations, my no-show rate started to climb. So first it was like 30, 35%. Then it went up to 40, 45%. So I'm looking at like, maybe I would book 8 people a day and 4 would show, which is not going to work business-wise. At the same time, I got into working with Child Protective Services. And that is a much longer evaluation, a much more intense, much more things that have to be done. So I was seeing on my calendar, I was booking out these evaluations for Social Security that were about 45 minutes to an hour. Those people weren't showing, but I needed 2.5 hours for an evaluation for Child Protective Services. So I was looking at the data because in the very end, like I'm a huge statistics nerd and all this research stuff. So I was looking at the data and realized that my no-show rate for disability evaluations was much higher than my no-show rate for my Child Protective Services evaluations. And I made more money doing the Child Protective Services evaluations. So I started slowly moving out the disability evaluations, moving up the Child Protective Services evaluations. And I was actually making more money getting rid of one revenue stream than I was keeping both. Mm-hmm. So about 1.5 to 2 years into the business, I completely stopped doing disability evaluations and added more counties for Child Protective Services, which was great, except I then got into dealing with a lot of people who it's a completely underserved population. They have very little resources here. I'm in Alabama. And so a lot of it was rural and they didn't have transportation a lot of times. So I would then drive to the county they were in to see them. Back to the data. I was not making enough money in my office to even keep my office. So I closed my office and just started traveling to whatever county needed me. So I work now almost exclusively with Child Protective Services in about 14 or 15 different counties in my state. And but I only worked.
That's wide range. Like that travel must be intense.
It's about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes one way, depending on where I go. And, sometimes it'll be like a county from Southern Alabama will call and say, hey, we need something. We've got a client in Birmingham. Mm-hmm. I say, okay, no big deal. I'll just go see them wherever they are. Usually it's a hospital. So I have gotten some kind of outside my radius counties, but their clients are in my area. So it's all these shifts to move based on the data. I didn't make, that's the biggest thing for me is make sure there's a logical reason as to why I'm doing these moves. And then make it happen. So it's been like a steady increase in work. So I work about 30 to 35 hours a week, and I've doubled my income since I deleted disability and went exclusively to Child Protective Services evaluations.
Wow.
Yeah.
So is the business model the same? So when I asked that, meaning was the government still paying you to approve? So they had to come to you first before they got approved for any sort of funding? I mean, like disability or child, I mean, maybe I'm saying this wrong, but like the government would pay you to do these evaluations, right?
That's
And
correct.
so they had to come to you in order to get some sort of benefit, get approved for a benefit?
So in Child Protective Services, no benefits there. What you're talking about for disability, yeah, that was like one of their check marks they had to do on this really long list of things. So for Child Protective Services, the idea behind what I do is figure out if it's a kid, figure out if the kid is safe and or where the kid needs to go to be safe and get treatment. If it's an adult, it's usually how do we improve the quality of life where they don't make the same mistake twice. So a lot of what I do with kids and teenagers is treatment placement. So what are their negative behaviors? What's going on with them? Can they stay in their house and just get counseling versus all the way to they need an intensive placement in order to target their behaviors to hopefully try to keep them out of prison.
So
yeah, the business model is the same. Like I still get paid by the state government. I still do that kind of stuff. I don't need an office, so I've reduced my expenses by $1,000 a month. Well, a little bit more than that when you do like insurance and things. But I pay more for gas now, you know, that kind of stuff. The bonus for me with driving is that I get to listen to podcasts like this. And I am improving what I feel like is my business knowledge while I'm driving to these places, you know, because I don't have a background in business. So I try to listen to business podcasts like this to learn more pieces of how I can make myself more efficient, more business-like.
That's amazing. So there's another question that I want to ask before we even get to this. We might not even get to like, okay, now you're training other people how to do what you do. Like that's amazing. Like I'm very fascinated with how you launched this part of your career so successfully. So when you transferred, and I don't mean to be jumping around, but to recap of where we are right now, you know, got your education, worked in the prison system, got injured, put in your 2 weeks notice and just said, hey, I'm going to go open my own brand new practice. So you started with disability, then you realized there was more opportunity with Child Protective Services. And so that's where we are right now. I want to go back between the transition between, not even the transition, but like when you first launched your private practice with the disability services. I mean, you hadn't worked in that field yet, right? And were you basically pitching yourself to the government? Like, how did you land your first client? Let's ask that question.
So this is where it becomes a little weird. While I hadn't done a specific disability evaluation, I actually had done these evaluations in different areas. So when I was an intern at the prison, I was doing forensic evaluations for people who had not gone to court yet. So like I was doing IQ tests, I was doing, you know, these long clinical backgrounds, what's going on with them. Again, you know, like the puzzle pieces, putting it together. And then when I went to the secure hospital, I was doing the exact same thing. And then we had a subset of people who were what we called stepping down to a less secure environment. So we would have to put together, you know, like their history and what their progress was and how they actually, you know, could make this step down and be successful. So those pieces were like the evaluation part. So I knew how to do a clinical background. I knew how to ask the mental health questions. I knew how to do the IQ test, that kind of thing. The piece that I had that I think was most beneficial that a lot of psychologists don't have is when I was in my master's program, getting my master's degree, I worked for a year in career development services at the university where I was. And so one of my like little hobby fascinations has always been how people got to where they got in their career. And so I did a whole lot of studying on, you know, like what jobs were, how you got there, what the
kind of like what we're doing now.
Exactly. And it's weird how, like when I said wild and twisty, it really has been wild and twisty, my journey. But I think that was the piece that set me apart from other people, is that I had the clinical background to do the evaluation, but I also had the career knowledge to say, okay, well, if somebody gets hurt, doing like a truck driver was in an accident, for example. Okay, well, he knows how to have, like a huge truck and drive it, and he has CDL. Can we then get him a forklift certification? Like, can we transfer those skills to something else where it's not as demanding? Or, like, can we work with his injury to get him another job, kind of thing? So I was able to look at the whole picture in kind of a different way than most people can. So I think that was how that happened, even though I had never officially worked for disability. Literally, I just called and talked to the guy and told him, like, here's who I am. Here's what I've done. I'm here. I heard you guys had a huge backlog and I want to help you fix it. And he was like, okay. So I had the paperwork in like an hour. At that point, I did not have a printer with a scanner. So I had to go buy a printer with a scanner in order to scan this paperwork to send it back to him. And that was it. I was approved within like a week. And
as a vendor? Or you're approved as a provider. As a provider, yeah. I said vendor, but I mean,
yeah, vendor's the same. Yeah, that's the state term. Yeah. So, so that was it. I mean, it was just literally that fast. And now looking back, I can see the connection. Like, if I call somebody and say, I can help you, here's how I can help you, I've gotten it every single time. Mm-hmm. And when it's not about me and it's about helping them.
Yep. That's awesome. I mean, you found, you found the demand, you found the pain point. Right. I don't know exactly how you found out that they had a backlog. I mean, it's irrelevant, but you found it. I just heard it. Oh, you just heard it. Yeah.
I just heard it when talking to people, and I think at that point, like maybe one of my dad's friends was going through the process because he had gotten hurt on the job, and he was like, I've been waiting for like 6 months to get in with a psychologist. And I was like, whoa, that shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
And here, there were times where people had been waiting like up to a year to get the whole process complete. So it's very interesting, like the background stuff. But I just heard it, and I was trying to figure out. I didn't want to do therapy. It's not my thing. I can do it. It's just not my zone of genius. And I love the puzzle pieces and putting them together. That's my favorite thing.
Yeah. That's awesome. So you found the need. And I love the connection piece that you talked about, because it's also how my mind works. Like during this entire interview, I've been trying to figure out the connection piece. And it's like, you finally came up with it. I had to keep asking, but the connection with how you landed your first client actually went back to what you were doing in your master's program and career development. Like that's how
I hadn't even thought about that until now. Like, yeah. I realized I did it back then, but until you said it, I was like, yeah, I didn't even.
Well, because there was a huge gap. I'm like, I'm not seeing the connection between the prison and what, like, and so, yeah, I knew it would come out. That's what I love doing too. And it's a fun process to go through. So you found the connection with your background and experience in career development. That's how you related it to what you're going to help people do with disability and the evaluations. And then the government said, yep, like, I believe you, like, I like your credentials, and that makes total sense. And we need somebody to relieve this pressure. Like the backlog is really just pressure building up. Like, yeah. So awesome. Okay. Glad we got that out of the way, because in my mind, I'm like, God, there's still something missing here.
Yeah, okay. I'm glad you said that, because now I can make that connection for myself. Like I told them all that back then, but I hadn't connected that piece for me. Like I've always connected that I like working with the underserved populations. And if you look, at my resume, it's always been working with people that have been considered an underserved population. Mm-hmm. So I just kind of thought that was the common thread. But now I know there's more.
Yep.
That's really cool, actually.
Awesome. Okay. Got that out of the way. So now let's fast forward. You served two different markets with your private practice. You found a big opportunity with child protective services. That's awesome, right? Mm-hmm. Now, tell us what you're doing, and like how the transition has taken you to where you are now. Because now I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're helping other people do what you're doing, right?
Right.
Okay.
So, like I was saying earlier, apparently what I've done is just not possible according to my industry. And I still talk with people when I go to psychology conferences and they're like, you've done what? I didn't know you could do that. And I'm like, well, you can, you just have to, unfortunately, be a better business person than you are necessarily a psychology person. We don't get trained in business, which is unfortunate. But the kind of the nexus for me was when I started having this success and people were asking me, how are you doing this? I don't understand how you can do all of this without a secretary. I don't understand how you do all this without a billing person. It's like, I just do the work. I answer my own phone. To me, it was common knowledge. To other people, it wasn't. So I started telling people, like, here's how I do this. Here's how I made it more efficient for me. So I wasn't picking up the phone every time it rang, because I did initially, because I thought, oh yeah, I need to make sure I get that appointment. At the end of the disability stuff, I told them, I will call you at lunch and I will call you at the end of the day. I don't have time to call you in between clients, because I was booking so many clients to try to overcompensate for the no-shows. So once they understood, I would call them like clockwork at lunch. I would call them in the afternoon. They didn't give away those appointments to somebody else because it was supposed to be a round robin system. So if they couldn't get me on the phone, they were supposed to go to the next person. And I was like, every time I miss the phone call, I'm missing money. So I had to figure out a way to make that not happen. Now it's a lot easier because it doesn't have to be that instantaneous. Like if somebody can't get me on the phone, they know they just email me. And if I can respond, I'll respond right away, because email is less intrusive for me to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
So those kind of pieces, I was telling people, like, here's how I've set up my business. Here's how I deal with the workers. Here's how I deal with the financial piece. And I was having all of these people, all different kinds of businesses, like, oh, I could do that for this. I could, implement this system in this practice, this book writing deal, this whatever. I could do that really easily. And so finally somebody said to me, like, why aren't you teaching people how to do this? And why did you just give that to me for free? And I was like, oh, I don't know. I never really thought about that. So, I gave it to somebody for free because I wanted them to do the exact same thing as me. I don't feel like in this business world, I know there's competition. I get that intuitively, but when somebody's in a completely different industry than me, it's not going to hurt me to share my secrets. So I was doing this, and they're like, you got to stop. Like, this is too much. You really need to start teaching people how to do this and making yourself available and making it, like part of your business. So I thought about that for a little while and I was like, you know what? They're right. I really shouldn't be giving away all of this stuff for free, even though I still do a whole lot. But I should be teaching people how to do this. And specifically, even though my background is not in serving women, so my prison work, my mental health hospital work, all of that, my research when I was in graduate school, all of it was related to working with men. I realized at this point where we are in society and where I am as a woman, I was like, I want to focus on helping women succeed and helping women realize that they can do this and it's not going to take away from their family and it's not going to take away from, all the things they want to achieve with their people. You can do this a whole lot more efficiently and not work any more hours, because that's what I was doing. Like, I used to work 60 hours because I was trying to figure everything out for myself and build my own stuff. And how was I going to do it this way? And that was fun because I was determined when I left, I would work 80 hours for myself and 40 hours for somebody else. But I didn't want to keep doing that because I was missing out on all the stuff I wanted to do. So I was like, okay, how do I fix this where I can work 30 to 35 hours, because that's my goal every week, and then play. I would rather play much more than I would work. So I started getting all of these pieces put together and I was like, you know what? I just need to teach other people how to do this. And it became this, it was kind of like an itch where I just couldn't get rid of it once I started thinking about it. So it's like, okay, it's time. I need to do it. So that's in the process of I've signed all the paperwork to make it an official business. The website is in design process and should hopefully be finished soon. So like all of that, instead of jumping in like I did with the first business because I had to, I've taken my time with this one and set it up what I feel like is the proper way, branding, every kind of piece that I needed to do first. And now I'm going back and starting kind of like, okay, let's do some lead generation and those kinds of things.
So you're defining what is like the ultimate expert. Like as you progress, you're, I'll say, perfecting certain skills and then seeing that like when you solved that one problem, which for you discovered was when you were starting out and your no-show rate would climb with the disability services. So you like probably right away you realized that was a problem. And so you figured out how to solve that, apply it to the child protective services. So you're building your business around here and then you're doing some sort of self-reflection and realizing that other people are having this similar issue and that's springboarding you to the next stage of your career or of your professional career. Yeah.
Right.
So it's fascinating. I mean, like that is because you're an expert in something. And if you're listening right now, like you've got some sort of skill that people want. And like it can be so super specific, like making your process more efficient. Like you solved a no-show rate. You solved how to make your time more efficient, how to make your business more efficient. Almost every entrepreneur needs that, like some form of efficiency. And so that's fascinating. I mean, I love listening to the journey. It's like, okay, grab this skill and you're going to apply it, 6 months, a year, 2 years down the road because other people need that. You might not see it right now, but it's like taking a step back and reflecting on what got me to where I am today. How can I help other people? Those are the core questions you need to ask.
Yeah, well, the evaluation piece comes from like a long time ago. I worked with a federal grant and I was responsible for all the the administrative, the statistics. I told you I've been a statistic nerd for years. So like the stats and the research and, I had to prove basically that we needed this money. And so I had to figure out how to evaluate the program at 21 years old to show that we needed hundreds of thousands of dollars for these kids to have this after school program and the summer camp. And so when I started doing, when I started looking at what I wanted to do in my graduate program, that piece came up again for me because I really liked it. I liked looking at what was beneficial and what was useful and getting rid of the rest and let's make more room for what's beneficial and useful. So then when this started coming in the practice, I was like, okay, let me go back to that and use kind of those things to figure out where do I need to go because this is not working. And much like I made that really quick 2-week decision to leave and start a business, when something's not working, I want to fix it. And I don't want to wait because that's impacting everything. It's impacting my revenue. It's impacting the amount of time I have to spend working. And it's impacting the amount of people I can help. And so my whole goal is to make money. Like obviously this is a business. But my goal is to reach a large amount of people, which is also one of my like driving forces for the coaching. Because I thought, well, if I can teach people how to do this, then I'm not just reaching the people that I'm sitting across from. I'm reaching everybody they can reach by being more efficient, using their time better, those kinds of things. So that's kind of like the journey there is. And I never, when I was 21 years old, thought, almost 20 years later, I would be using that skill for me. But it's, over the time periods, I've just picked it up and used it and was like, okay, this is great. So what I thought was like a really hard thing back then actually has been super beneficial learning it.
Yeah. It's fascinating to me because every time that we have these discoveries in the journeys, whether I'm interviewing somebody or I'm talking to somebody to figure out how they got to where they are today, a lot of professionals who are considering starting a side hustle or starting their own business or, growing their coaching program, the thing that holds them back is nobody knows me. Like it's basically like, how do I jump into a new market or how do I get my first client? It's like that never goes away. Like that fear never goes away, meaning you can have a successful business and then you're ready to kind of, transition How do I jump into a new market or a new opportunity when nobody has heard of me? And in your story, it's like you're making that pivot right now, meaning your medical profession, I'll call it your psychology profession. Yeah, you're built up there, but now you're going to help fellow entrepreneurs and you haven't served them yet. And it's like, and the same thing happened when you first went and launched your practice. You had never, served that group before. And it's like uncovering like how I got that first client, how I got that first person to say yes is then it starts to snowball. And I just want people to understand, I want you to understand if you're listening right now, like getting into a new market is not as difficult as you think. It's all about what you said earlier. How can you solve a pain? Like what's the pain that you can solve, and how can you correlate something in your past to say, I can help you. Like, for you, it was your career development specialty and your expertise that got them to say yes.
Yeah. And it sounds really simple, like talking about it. But when you sit down and think about it, it really is that simple.
Mm-hmm.
Is it going to be super simple for me to get clients again? I don't know. I mean, maybe, or maybe not. The reality is I feel like I was really pretty lucky to jump into what I did with my practice and do so well so quickly. So I'm not expecting that for this next one. If it happens, I'm not going to complain. But, there's some things that you can set up that make it not so hard.
Mm-hmm.
And it's especially with talking to people and meeting people and listening to stories. That's what I like the most. And one of the reasons why I went to the unfair advantage and, like I had never met anybody like me, I thought, right? I belong in this space. Mm-hmm. It's what I've realized over the past 6 weeks. This is really where I should have been the whole time. I love psychology. I am great at psychology. I just don't generally think the same way as psychologists do. But the entrepreneurs that I've met, we're dead on. 100%. I can have a conversation. We can come with all these ideas and how to do things. And I'm really energized after I had these conversations. And I'm a total introvert. So for me to get energized about putting in effort with other people is hard. It just turns out I really hadn't met my people yet. So, pulling from that and pulling from, just little pieces here and there, it makes it a little easier. It's a little scary. I'm not going to lie. It is scary, but I have a practice already. If I don't do anything with coaching and, down the road, I only help one person, that's still one more person that was helped. And that's fine for me. I'm not going to close my business unless the coaching thing really takes off. And I'm actually exploring some other things for the business anyway. So, I just like to be open.
Yeah.
What comes my way and to make those decisions as they come. And I think that has really served me.
It's very critical. Being open to seeing other opportunities. I mean, just seeing what the opportunities are. Same thing happened with me when I started in webinars. I mean, I never thought that I'd be a webinar specialist, but that was the opportunity that presented itself. Yeah. And that's how I seized it. So.
And I think that's really important. And I think that is kind of one of the big lessons that I've learned is you may go in thinking it's going to look like ABC. And, you may get 3 different letters of the alphabet. And that's okay. It doesn't always have to be exactly what you envision for you to have the impact that you want to have.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Ashley, I had a great time. We learned absolutely. Your story is incredible. I mean, just to recap what we've discussed so far. So we started at the beginning of your professional career, which is your specific different types of education. I mean, you have a bachelor's and a master's, and I always get this wrong. I mean, do I say that you have a doctorate or?
I have a doctorate. Yeah.
Okay, doctorate. Yeah.
Same thing.
All right. So you have a doctorate, and then you went to go work for the prison system and you got hurt. And you're like, holy crap, there goes my plan. My plan's screwed up. So you said, well, I'm going to take a risk. Here's my 2 weeks, and I'm going to go open my own private practice against all the advice of the entire field saying, it's not going to work. You booked up your calendar within 3 months and made 6 figures the first year because you solved a pain. And the real thing that we learned there, that this entire conversation was how you landed that first client was because you related your previous experience with career development, and you said, this is why I'm great at career development. Here's how I can apply my psychology background to serving the people that need disability evaluations. Boom, you're hired. Let me send you hundreds of clients.
I know, right? It's great, actually.
Yeah.
I really like that connection, and I hadn't made it. And I'm super excited about actually having that in my brain now. Like, that was how it kind of put together for me.
Yep. And we also discussed keeping your mind open to new opportunities, because that led you to then transitioning to child protective services, which allowed you more higher revenue potential. And it also freed up your time. You're able to design your business around your life. And then that transition to where you're going on now, which is helping people become more efficient in their own business. And so this whole leapfrog opportunity that we're seeing is, how can we apply what we learned maybe 6 months ago or a year ago, or maybe even just like a week ago, use that expertise to leverage yourself and launch yourself into the next opportunity. Did I leave anything out? Is that pretty much sum it up?
That was a great recap.
Great.
I love it.
So where can people find you? Because you're venturing out into your own opportunities. You have your own wealth of knowledge. How can people connect with you and follow you?
So my website is up now. It's drashleyhampton.com. So Dr. Ashley Hampton. It's in the process of being redesigned. So what's up as of the podcast date won't stay up. So if you want to go see like a behind the scenes of how great of a web developer I am, you want to go fast. And otherwise, hang out within like a week of when this was recorded. The new design will be up, and it won't be my design. It's so much better. But there will be some blog posts. There will be some content upgrades on there. Obviously, there's a way to schedule a call with me if anybody's interested and wants to just chat and see if I would be somebody that they would want to work with. I'm not one of those people that's going to take everyone that calls and just like promise them the world. If we're not a good fit, then, I have a huge bank of people now that I could refer you to that do all kinds of awesome work. And that's where I am hanging out these days.
Amazing. So be sure to go check out, can I call you Dr. Ashley? I mean, I'm asking you at the end of the interview. Is that how you like to be referred to, or Dr. Hampton?
Or Ashley, either one.
Or Ashley. Okay. So hit up Ashley, follow her, check out what she's doing. She's in an awesome launch pad right now. And so it's always fun to watch. Like, I know she's going to be doing big things. So like, when you listen to this podcast, go check out her website, just connect with her and follow her. Because I always like watching people on their journey through the transition points and on their journey up. So go follow her. Let her know that you found, that you connected with her through our podcast. And Ashley, thanks again for spending so much time with us and sharing your journey. It was very, very inspirational and educational.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. Thanks, Joel.
Awesome. And until next time, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you on the next episode. Take care.
Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we look forward to giving you the next one. Now, if you want additional trainings and content outside of the podcast, I release exclusive video trainings on my Experts Unleashed YouTube channel. And if you'd like to come hang out with thousands of other fellow experts, join our Facebook group community where we do hangouts and webinars to help support you in your journey. Finally, if you'd like my personal help to develop, launch, or scale your business, contact me directly for private consulting opportunities to see if any spots are available. And you can find all of the information above at expertsunleashed.com.